Clerk, time is 7 o'clock. I'm going to call this committee of the whole to order. Town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. Shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Councillor, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Gilliland, seconder. Councillor Kim, comments, questions? All the vote, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Community presentations, we have one. 5.1, June Sinclair, Aurora Lions Club regarding pet value walk for dog guard. Tongue twister today. Ms. Sinclair, welcome. You have 5 minutes and the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm with the Aurora Lions Club, and we wanted to take this opportunity to remind everyone of our upcoming Pet Value Walk for Dog Guides being held on Sunday, May 26th at 11 a.m. at the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Park. This is an annual nationwide walk which supports the Lions Foundation of Canada Dog Guides. The foundation was formed in 1983, and their mission is to empower Canadians who are living with disabilities to navigate their world with independence and confidence by providing a dog guide to each at no cost to them and supporting each pair in their journey together. The cost to train one dog is approximately $35,000, and there's no government funding in place for this. The foundation relies completely on events such as this and the generosity of individuals and businesses willing to give. When thinking of dog guides, most of us think of seeing eye dogs, but these little superheroes are able to help their owners with so much more. Of course, the canine vision, but we all know. Some are trained to detect important sounds and for their owners that are deaf or hard of hearing. They can detect telephone rings, doorbells, and more importantly, fire and carbon monoxide alarms. There are service dogs that are trained to fetch objects, open and close automatic doors, and get help by barking or activating an alert system. Some are trained to alert their owner of an oncoming epileptic seizure and provide comfort during this time. Other dogs are trained to provide safety, companionship, and unconditional love to children dealing with autism. For children with diabetes and hypoglycemia, there are dogs who can alert them to a drastic drop in blood pressure. They even know how to retrieve food that will help them activate an alert system and avoid a worsening or life-threatening situation. Unlike the police dogs, these facility support dogs are trained to give on-scene comfort to victims or witnesses of crimes or tragedy. Their role is so important in helping Canadians living with disabilities, and you can help in just 1 hour. This is a short 2-kilometer or 5-kilometer walk through our beautiful arboretum. It'd be wonderful if the councillors and everyone here could join us with family and friends. I understand that Councillors Gallo and Weiss have already offered their support, and we're looking forward to seeing you there. If you can't make the date, which I know everyone gets busy, You can still help support this great cause by sharing information regarding the walk, posting on social media, and donating, and any amount helps. Please remember that you, although we refer to this as a dog walk, you don't need to have a dog in order to walk. It is a fun family and dog-friendly walk. So we thank you so much for your time. Hope to see you there.
Thank you, Ms. Sinclair. Councillor, can I get a motion to receive presentation? Councillor Gardner, Councillor Weiss, any comments, questions? Councillor Gallo?
Oh, no question. Just a comment of thank you for organizing this event. I was there last year, and I intend, as you mentioned, to be there again this year with our dog. Many may not know you, but I've known you for, I think we're on our 28th year, something like that. And just wanted to personally and publicly thank you for all the work that you've done for the community, our local community, and now this venture. So thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you for coming. And it's amazing what these dogs can do. Really
Are, and you know, maybe I didn't get to that last. I think I missed one section of that, which just said, unleash a dog's potential and it can save a life. This is a great picture. Can you put it back? I'm sorry. And it's true. They like having a job to do, and they do and they do save lives. So thank you again.
don't go away. One of my best friends was a dog. They cost $35,000. Is that partly because of all the training that goes into them?
It is. It's a huge facility. The Lions Foundation has a facility in Oakville and in Breslau. And they bring, I think it's almost a 2-year period to train these dogs. The puppies go to a foster home while they're going through their training. And then it's a 6-week program with the actual person who is the recipient of the dog. But it's quite a training facility. I haven't had a chance to go out to see it yet, but I would look forward to it.
Thank you very much for
Yeah.
coming.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We got no delegations. Move to advisory committee meeting minutes. Someone like to move items for advisory committee meeting minutes? Councillor Weiss, Councillor Kelland. Comments, questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Consent agenda, one item. Councillor Thompson, do you want to move that? Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Gardner, any comments, questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Does anyone want any items pulled from the remaining items? Councillor Thompson?
9.1, please.
Thank you.
And 9.5.
Did you say N 9.5?
9.5.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like them all pulled. Thank you.
Okay. Nine point one, Councillor Thompson, you pulled this one? Before we get there, Councillor, we do have a presentation from Mr. Rose first, so we'll do that and then I'll come back to you to move that. Mr. Rose, yep, absolutely. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. We're just going to pull up the presentation. And I'm joined tonight with or by Nicole Campsall, our Cultural Development Coordinator. We're going to give you a high-level summary of the Cultural Action Plan. It will take about 10 minutes, but hopefully maybe a little bit more. But we're certainly very pleased to be here tonight. This is a culmination of a number of years and number of hours of time and energy by the Cultural Services team in collaboration with our cultural partners, members of the public, as well as mayor and council. So, let me go here. Okay. So the Cultural Action Plan is a refresh actually of the initial Cultural Action Plan that was approved by council in June of 2014. It sunsetted in 2019, and we've been working, since then with a few hiccups due to COVID to refresh the plan. So the plan is a 5-year plan. Begins with the implementation begins this year after council approval, and we'll be sunsetting that plan in 2028 and refreshing it and bringing it back to council. To give you a few highlights of the plan itself, and really the sort of the heart of the plan is the back portion, which includes the 9 objectives, as well as the corresponding key results. So the objectives are sort of how we're going to do it, and the key results are sort of what we're going to do. So they're combined. You probably remember the language of key KPIs or key performance indicators. We've now shifted as a result of some efforts spearheaded by our project management office to OKRs, which are objectives and key results. So as I mentioned, we're going to be implementing the plan over a 5-year term, beginning this year and again ending in 2028. For each year of implementation, we'll be developing annual work plans that we'll be sharing with council, of course, members of our public, the public, and our cultural partners. And before I move on, I just want to acknowledge and say thank you to some of our cultural partners that are here with us tonight to share in sort of hopefully the approval of our Cultural Action Plan. So we have Fiona from Aurora Black Caucus, or Community Association, excuse me. We have Jane and Maury from Cultural Center as well. Javed, who everybody knows from president of Sports Hall of Fame. Linda Welch from the Society of York Region Artists, and Gord Shepherd from Aurora Community Band and Borealis Band. So we're very pleased that they're with us. They've been instrumental in putting the plan together and will be instrumental in implementing the plan over the next 5 years. Next slide, please.
As a team, there are a few important principles that will guide the work that the Cultural Services Division carries out. This includes ensuring that we engage with our community, cultural partners, and other key collaborators in a way that's responsive, collaborative, and equitable. Thank you. Supporting ongoing collaboration with partners in the community and ensuring environmental sustainability in the work that we do. Further to this, our team will treat the community, our partners, and each other with respect and kindness and behave in a proactive manner. We will be accountable and equitable and support a connected community. We will now move into the 9 objectives of the Cultural Action Plan. Objective 1 is to align the Cultural Action Plan with the town's truth and reconciliation efforts. Indigenous considerations will play a significant role in the facilitation of the Cultural Action Plan. We will provide quarterly updates as to the implementation of the plan to the Indigenous Relations Committee, which will provide an opportunity for ongoing feedback and improvement. Further to this, we plan to implement an inclusive classroom at Town Square. We will be modeling this after the inclusive classroom at the Community Safety Village in Stouffville, which includes wall hangings, artwork, and resources representing diverse communities and voices, including Indigenous teachings. This room will be home to our education programs. Our goal is that every community member who joins us for a program or event feels at home and represented in the space. It is important to ensure that Indigenous components are an integral part of Aurora Town Square all year long. We plan to increase Indigenous participation in events, programs, and exhibitions as part of the plan.
Slide. Okay. So one of the next objectives, objective number 2, is to develop creative innovation opportunities. We've heard from a number of different individuals in the community that there is a need for space and a need for resources to help creative professionals and creative entrepreneurs. So even though we've heard that anecdotally, one of the first things we want to do as part of objective 2 is to gauge the feasibility of either programs or a physical space that will serve, again, as a community hub for local artists, creative entrepreneurs, to allow them to create, network, share resources, and foster collaborative efforts. This is something that we'll be working with our economic development colleagues to undertake, but we'll begin by doing a feasibility study and develop the program and or create a physical space based on the results of that study. Switch.
Objective number 3 is to use culture days to increase awareness of local cultural groups and demonstrate their value to Aurora. As you may know, Culture Days takes place each year in September and October, and Aurora organizations provide exciting and engaging free programming to the community. We will allocate an annual budget to support Culture Days. We will continue to review and evaluate Culture Days programming by Q4 annually to ensure continued improvement and success. Beyond this, we intend to increase the heritage experiences that are offered during Culture Days through the Aurora Museum and Archives.
This is fun. Okay, so number 4 is to map the cultural resources that comprise Aurora's cultural sector. Culture mapping is a very important part of cultural planning. When the province first prompted municipalities to get involved and begin to create cultural plans back in sort of around 2010, cultural mapping was one of the first things that municipalities used to do, including the town of Aurora. Essentially, it's a way of creating a database that includes the people, places, and organizations that are considered a cultural resource, putting them into a database and then translating that data into a map. And the map is really meant to show where the concentrations of cultural resources are in your community. So when you're making decisions about where to invest in your creative economy, you have an understanding of where the clusters of your creative and cultural resources are. There's also a tourism component. So anyone who is visiting Aurora, for example, will be able to find through this interactive map that will take the data, we'll put into an interactive map and better understand where, where example, you can go see an art show, or maybe you can go see a concert, or maybe there's something else happening. So one of the important things we'll do is revive the data that we have in our database, update it, redefine what a cultural resource is, and then translate that data into GIS technology and a map that will be usable for the public, serving a cultural tourism purpose. Our goal is by the end of Q4 is to first set a baseline for how many people use our database and map, and then increase that by 50% by the time we finish the implementation in Q4 of 2028. Number 5 is to position Aurora as an arts and culture, heritage, and tourism destination within New York region. So here we think there's, again, now that we have hospitality infrastructure, now that Town Square is about to open, we anticipate there's going to be revitalization downtown. We've seen some new restaurants and different businesses around town open up. What we think there's a potential for is what we call cultural tourism experience packages. So there's an opportunity to work with, again, our economic development colleagues, as well as Central County's tourism, to create a series of tourism experience packages, which would include or could include, accommodations at one of our hotels here in town, dinner at a local restaurant, and then tickets to a show at Aurora Town Square. There could be a shuttle service that's part of that as well. But we think there's a demand there. We think that's a way of increasing our portfolio, our understanding of Aurora as a key place for cultural tourism. So that's going to be a key priority with the implementation of the plan. The other one is to try to draw in more national, provincial, arts, cultural, and heritage and tourism initiatives into town. So we have a lot of great initiatives. Culture Days is a good example of this. The other one is probably that you may be aware of is a Contact Photography Festival. We've been in conversations, as well as Design TO, which is a design competition. And we've had conversations about them of using Aurora as sort of a satellite municipality for their initiative. So we think because, in proximity to Toronto and within the GTA, there's an opportunity for this. The Contact Photography Festival, we're actually launching or having the opening reception tomorrow at Royal Rose Art Gallery. Everyone is welcome. Starts at 6 o'clock. I think speeches are at 7 o'clock. It ends at 8. And this is a large photography festival, and this is our kind of contribution to it. So that's an example of what we're looking to do, is to bring more of those national and provincial initiatives to Aurora.
Objective 6 is to increase the capacity of the local cultural sector. We will bring together local cultural groups by hosting an annual cultural summit that will include a keynote speaker and professional development and networking sessions to provide tools and opportunities for growth to our community organizations. We'll also be hosting regular networking and knowledge sharing sessions throughout the year to provide a chance for ongoing learning. It was clear to us when we spoke to our cultural partners that there are some key items that the town can provide to help support their efforts. We will create a cultural partner associate membership program that will provide member organizations with various support, such as marketing and communication assistance and permit support. This program will have requirements for members, such as participation in Culture Days, to ensure mutual benefit to organizations and the Aurora community. Objective 7 is to ensure that the Cultural Action Plan remains strategically aligned with other related corporate plans. Throughout the duration of the cultural action plan, we will ensure that it is aligned with other plans that guide the work that the town does. During this time, we will also update the Aurora Town Square business plan and the museum plan. Objective 8 is to use cultural services resources to support downtown revitalization and create a distinct sense of place. Supporting the revitalization of downtown is a key component of the cultural action plan. Public art makes spaces welcoming, meaningful, and strengthens communities. We plan to introduce public art to the cultural precinct to add visual beauty, connection, and engagement to the downtown space. Further, we will contribute to the promenade streetscape redevelopment design process and regularly meet with both economic development and the downtown business community to ensure that the town square aligns with the revitalization efforts.
And lastly is objective number 9, which is to demonstrate that arts, heritage, and culture play an instrumental role in enhancing Aurora's quality of life and supporting a vibrant town. Data is really important to this. And one of the things that we've been able to do over the last couple of years is participate in the Municipal Cultural Statistics Program with Creative City Network of Canada. It's a lot of raw data, but it does show what the GDP impact of culture is to Aurora, what the economic development impact is to Aurora. We've never really been able to translate that data into anything tangible that kind of paints the picture of how important culture is to our community from a quality of life and economic development perspective. So in addition to the data that we gleaned from that program, as well as gathering our own quantitative and qualitative data through, again, conversations, being out in the public, and sort of just a rigorous data collection process, we want to be able to issue a cultural impact report annually that lets council know how, you know, the dollars that we're spending on culture are having a ripple effect in the community. There's different ways that we can do that, but that's something that we're committed to, is reporting how culture is, you know, a pillar to economic development and quality of life. We also want to continue to make sure that the programs that we're developing, again, with Town Square coming on board, we have a great opportunity, and we have a number of different performances, exhibitions, events that we're hosting, as well as the Cultural Center and our partners, and then also our cultural partners as well. So we want to be able to make sure that we're meeting the demand of the community, but also bringing in some revenue to offset some of the taxpayer investment into culture. So we want to make sure that we do an ongoing evaluation of our programs on an annual basis, and that's something we'll do in a rigorous manner going forward as part of the implementation process. One more. There you go.
So we will use Viva Goals, a digital platform, to implement the cultural action plan. This forward-looking software will allow staff to see real-time insights, keep track of each project and each of the tasks that are associated with it, and report on the progress of the implementation of the plan.
And then last slide, just again, acknowledging and saying thank you, first and foremost, to Mayor and Council for your support. Looking forward to your questions and any comments you have. And again, saying thank you to those that have joined us tonight and maybe online from our cultural groups, as well as all the residents and the different organizations that have contributed to the plan. We're very grateful for the support. Thank you very much for your time, and happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, now go. Do you want to move that recommendation? Thank you. Seconder. Seconder. Councillor Gilliland, thank you. Any questions to the presentation or to the report? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Thank you both for the presentation, and certainly much appreciated to see all the groups and stakeholders here this evening that helped support and be part of the process to develop the plan. Really just two things I wanted to touch on. First off, you know, you identify a lot of great actions and initiatives over the next 4 to 5 years for this action plan. But when I looked in the report under financial implications, I was a little bit confused. I'm just going to read it out, if you give me a minute. You say that the 2024 to 2028 Cultural Action Plan's delivery will be funded through a previously approved capital project, number so-and-so, Cultural Services Master Plan. And so I checked with finance, and they said there's only $16,000 left in that capital project. So I'm confused, because I'm trying to think of how are you going to deliver on all of the initiatives that you talk about. Some of them you talk about allocating budget to certain initiatives if there's only $16,000 left in the capital project.
Councillor.
Through
Thank
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Rose.
Ms. Rose?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Thompson. I may ask Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel to answer, but do you want to answer that? Yeah.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the current project, which has council approval and capital budget authority, only has 16,000 remaining. In the 10-year plan for the budget, there are additional 1-year amounts included in years 2025 through 2029 of roughly about 50,000 plus inflation each year. So as these pieces start to roll out, there'll be additional requests that come on an annual basis that will then get added on to that project.
Councillor?
Thank you. So my interpretation of the response is then that this doesn't create any budgetary pressure, that the delivery of all of these services and initiatives will have no impact on the tax levy because we've already pre-approved from a capital perspective. And so there's no staffing requests. There's no increased budgets through the various culture. That's what I take from that financial implications. And so that's why I'm saying I'm a little challenged and because I think it's a great plan, but I also want to understand the financial implication of said report.
Ms. Rose? Through me.
To Councillor Thompson. If I can qualify that, and that's $50,000 annually that we're setting aside for cultural planning implementation. From a staffing perspective, we don't anticipate any staffing over the course of the implementation period. There may be staffing again that is considered as part of the town square growth, but again, that's not something that we're contemplating as part of the cultural planning. So we're comfortable that within, and what we've done is we've made sure that over the course of the 5 years of the implementation, that every year is manageable from a budget perspective. So you'll see that in the cultural plan itself, that some things don't even start as far as implementation until Q2 2027, for example. And we've done that strategically to make sure that we're not, first of all, front loading the implementation, so we have we're overwhelmed with the implementation, but also that we're making sure that we optimize the budget as much as possible. So based on our projections, $50,000 to be able to do things like the cultural summit, to support culture days, to help with truth and reconciliation efforts. There also are supplemental budgets that are associated with some of those already, but we think 50,000 annually is more than enough to do the implementation of the plan that you see before us. And again, that is separate from the town square budget. And to answer your question, there is no for the implementation, because it has been planned for with the budget cycle as of last year. There are no implications or impacts, I believe, to the tax levy going forward.
Councillor?
Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. It helps me understand it better. My second question has to do with Viva goals. And would you mind putting up the slide again? Because I was quite impressed with this slide, because you sing some high praise for Viva goals. You can talk about it being innovative and forward thinking, and how it's going to allow us to anticipate challenges and find solutions. So I'm curious to know whether or not we've adopted Viva goals throughout the organization, and what kind of success we've had with it so far. And I'm told that perhaps Mrs. Desario might be best to answer that. So through you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Desario?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We are doing our best to have it adopted throughout the whole organization. Our project management office has been working with each individual departments and divisions in order to get OKRs and other information on the Viva Goals platform. At this time, most of us of the departments are on it and are just working our way through trying to navigate it. And we're hoping that by the end of this year, maybe around next year, that we're all on it and using it very well and efficiently.
Councillor?
I hope it's as successful as it says here on the slide in terms of allowing the town to be more effective and efficient. But I'm sure there'll be further conversations every year when we get to the budget and we talk about how successful we were and our goals and objectives. I'll be sure to bring up Viva and see whether or not it's delivered on what we thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. Thank you for the plan. We've been waiting a long time for this to come out. I know when we first asked for this, so it is very robust. So just for clarity, because some of the questions I had were discussed now, but correct me, did you say there was 50,000 that were set aside on an annual basis to help implement that? Could you just clarify?
Sure.
Ms. Rose?
Sure, through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Gilliland. Yes, and then what we have done is in 2023, 7 or 8, we've set aside some additional money to help us with the refresh. So if we do need consultation, the one thing that I am proud of and working with our cultural services team is that the refresh was done entirely in-house with no consultation, third-party consultants. I think that's a big deal for us, and most cultural plans are done by third-party consultants. I think culture is really important that we have sort of the local flavor and the understanding. So we were very adamant that we use our own internal resources for that. However, when it comes to the to the refresh of this plan, we have set aside some money just sort of as an opportunity that we can use those resources if there are a number of different competing demands at that time. But our goal is to continue to do the refreshes in-house. But yes, the answer is 50,000 annually, which we believe is enough to implement the plan that you see before you.
Councillor.
Thank you. So I hope you're setting a precedence for all third-party consultants that are being requested for other departments. Just throw that out there. I guess the other question I had was the Viva Goals thing. Is this something that we anticipate to utilize as a tool to guide us on like a quarterly basis? Like, just to help me understand how it works. You know, obviously we want set goals aside, but, you know, sometimes we have budget constraints. We have a flow of workflow that might, you know, hinder us from getting things done in a certain timeline. So how are we going to measure that progress throughout the year versus an annual look?
Ms. Rose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gilliland. So yeah, when you put in the objectives, so as you saw them here tonight, each of them have key results. And then if you drill down a little bit more, then each of them have projects associated with those key results. The projects are sort of the day-to-day work that you need to do to implement the key results and the objective to meet them. You can set it so you get reminders. I think the frequency you can set as well. And so you get in your inbox, you get insights, Viva Goal insights to let you know where you are in the implementation. If something's slipping from the timetable that you've put into Viva Goals, it kind of lets you know that, hey, you're kind of missing, and you got to either dedicate more resources or time to do that. So that happens on an ongoing basis. I can't recall exactly what Martin has done as far as the frequency, but I think it's on a weekly or monthly basis. You get these insights that let you know where you are in terms of tracking and implementing your OKR. So it's on a regular basis. We're committed to reporting back to council on a yearly basis or biannual basis as much as council is interested in hearing from us, but we want to make sure that we're definitely being as open about the implementation publicly and where we are having the most success and maybe where there are some challenges. But yeah, we get it sends you emails, as I said, that reminds you to dedicate more resources and times as you need to.
Councillor.
Thank you. And so with that, obviously, I would like to see a report maybe on a biannual basis because we need to prepare for the budget. And, with that, is there, in addition to your $50,000 annual budget, are you anticipating applying for grants? I mean, obviously, it's very, costly putting this cultural plan together, and we're trying to grow the town square project. So obviously, we're going to be focusing a lot on growing the culture industry. Do you foresee yourself dipping into granting and additional resources that way? Is that something you anticipate?
Ms. Rose.
I don't think 50,000 is going to get us very far. That's all.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To Councillor Gillen, I think 50,000 is enough, but certainly every time a grant comes up, we will absolutely seize the opportunity to do that. There are a number of different grants that are out there. Our museum's been very successful with a number of them from a staffing perspective recently. So we'll continue to pursue those to supplement what we need to. But I think 50,000 is more than enough. Again, we have programming money specifically for a lot of our cultural programs that are not part of the plan for implementation at Town Square. Those are part of our programming budget for Town Square. So again, we do have some supplemental budgets, but specifically for implementing the objectives that you see here, we're confident that 50,000 annually is what we need. And the reason why we have $16,000 left is because we've actually been pretty good over the last few years to make sure that we haven't spent those cultural planning dollars. We're going to be very strategic about it. There's a lot of other work beyond the implementation of the cultural plan that we'll be doing, of course, launching and getting Town Square up and running. And then forthcoming in the next few weeks, there'll also be a public art plan that'll be coming forward, and there'll be some budget implications there as well. So we think that 50,000 is enough, but we'll make sure we report back on that for sure.
Councillor.
Thank you. And through Mr. Mayor, sorry. I guess my final question is just, I just want to see some of that collaboration with the BIA. I understand you have some downtown revitalization in that promenade area. And I don't recall this coming to the BIA, but I'm certain that they would probably want to give some input to this and be included. They want to revitalize that downtown just as much as the rest of us. And, I'd like to see that collaboration. So could you maybe give me some context to that?
Rose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gillen, we typically will rely on our economic development team to be the liaison between us and our business partners in the community. We have presented the plan to our economic development manager and business and retention. Forget Angela's title, but so I think they've done some liaising with the business community, including the BIA as well as the ECDEV board. We have a monthly meeting that we do also with our arts, culture, and heritage organizations, and we had a representative from the BIA on our meeting today, in fact. And so we talked about the cultural plan at that point, and we had some conversations just about tonight. And so I think we've done the due diligence in terms of having the relationship and the conversations with our business community. One of our objectives is to continue to make sure that economic development and cultural planning are tied in as much as possible, because they are very integral and connected. And so as part of our one objectives is to make sure that at least on an annual basis, we're reaching out to the ECDEV group, to our Promenade Action team, and to our BAA to say, we want our cultural services resources to support business. How can we do this better? So we'll continue those conversations.
Councillor.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because I know the BIA was working on their strategic plan and they want to definitely be involved and have a say. And, for me, it's the first time I'm hearing about, obviously you guys having this discussion, because it just happened today, and I don't think or yesterday maybe, but I wasn't there for that meeting. But moving forward, I think that was kind of the whole point with us coming to, not us, but the BIA board coming to council and asking for us to look for more collaboration, because we all want the same things to be achieved downtown. So if we can continue that lines of communication, I think that would be great.
Thank you. Councillor Reese.
Yes, thank you. I had a couple of questions that have been answered about the rather vague financial implications, but you've done a great job on and telling me about that, and also the BIA, because I sit on that. The only thing that I think that I wanted to ask is there's a comment in here about diverse population. And I think with the diversity that we have in our community, there's only one or two little instances of making sure we're being culturally sensitive to the diverse population. Can you expand a bit on that for me, just so we're comfortable about where you might be going? Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the delegate.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'll do my best to address that. There's certainly, well, one, we recognize that the community is obviously growing, diversifying, and aging as well. We want diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging to be an important part of our cultural plan. There are some sort of separate supplemental efforts that are happening on the DEI front that will, I think, be coming to council in a separate report. But as far as using the programming at Town Square, as well as the resources, the cultural services, we definitely want to make sure that our programs are reflective of the community and the changing face of the community. So we're very conscious of that. The inclusive classroom that Nicole talked about is one example. So we're going to be doing a lot of education programs, and we're going to be mimicking or using a template of inclusive classroom that York Region Police put together that uses the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, as well as a number of other kind of diversity related resources to try to create education programs. I think it being a little bit vague, but I mean, I would say that it is certainly something that's a priority for us, and we're going to be developing programs that speak to that, ensuring that we have those relationships. One of the things we did, and it's probably in the earlier section of the plan where we talk about some of the engagement we did and some of the message we heard that for some communities who maybe Aurora is a bedroom community, or maybe, they're new to the community, it's important for us not to expect them to come to us, but for us to go out to the communities and try to engage them where they are. And that could be at a special event, that could be specifically in their community. We're very conscious of that. So I think that, the best thing I can say is probably we're conscious of it. We're going to design our programs to reach as many people as possible and to, again, reflect the changing face of our community.
Councillor.
Great, thank you. No, just the last one. I have a note here about some shared oversight on the community partnership grants, because we've had that come here before and talk about the changes. Can you explain a little bit about the role that you'll be playing on the shared oversight of those partnership grants?
Mr. Rose.
Through you.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Weiss. So the Cultural Partnership Program grant is the responsibility for evaluating the submissions and liaising with the community groups is a shared responsibility for the Recreation and Culture divisions within the Community Services Department. So Nicole and I sit on the evaluation committee in addition to our it's not as well. Ms. McDougall's AA, as well as the manager of recreation. So it's a shared responsibility in the sense that when we get those applications come in the evaluation process, we have a rubric and we have criteria. We review those collectively, and then we meet. There's 4 times per year, as you probably remember. There's an intake 4 times per year. So after each intake deadline, we each individually review the applications. We score them based on the rubric, and then we get together and determine which ones are going to be granted funding. And we found that since we've actually relaunched the program as the community partnership program, it's been hugely successful. Clearly, the demand for resources and funding for the municipality outstrips the resources we currently have. And we are committed, and it'll be our manager of recreation services that will report on the grant funding, I think twice per year. So there'll be a report that's coming forward at some point, letting council know which organizations we funded, for how much, and which ones that weren't successful.
Thanks.
Councillor.
That's it. Thank you.
You, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm interested in the definition of culture that you've chosen. I'm going to read it. The set of distinctive spiritual, material, intellectual, and emotional features of a society or social group that encompasses not only art and literature, but lifestyles, ways of living together, values, systems, traditions, and beliefs. Is that what you're hoping to accomplish with this action plan? It's
Rose.
very big.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We're using that sort of as our guide for how we interpret, understand culture. So culture, as is mentioned a couple times, there's a few adjectives we use in there. It's shape-shifting. Sometimes it's difficult to understand. At the very simple level, people understand it as arts and culture. So it's your artists, it's your gallery exhibitions, it's your museum exhibitions, it's your concerts, your special events. But it's actually more than that. It's about the values and traditions we share as a community, how we understand ourselves and define ourselves. So I think that's the guidepost that we're going to use for culture, which is about our collective understanding of our community and each other. So it's beyond just, and that's about, again, the traditions and the values that we define Aurora as. And those are reflected through the arts and cultural, programs and offerings that we provide to the community. So the one great thing about culture is that it's very all-encompassing. It's a large umbrella that incorporates a lot of different parties and people and partners, but it's also sometimes very difficult to pin down. So we see that as sort of a double-edged sword. But that's the definition that we're going to be using. The United Nations, that's the definition from them, the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. And that's often actually, if you look at most municipal cultural plans, that's the definition that most municipalities adopt. And if you look further up, I thought you were actually going to speak to the definition from David White about sort of culture being sort of the soul life of our community and sort of the essence of what we define as a community. That kind of plays into the UNESCO definition. But to answer your question, that's what we're using as sort of our guidepost to how we understand culture.
Councillor.
It's a very large goal. I hope you accomplish it. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. And to all our community partners, thank you for coming out. 9.2, Councillor Gardner, you pulled this one. Do you want to move the recommendation? Does anybody want to move the recommendation? Councillor Gilliland, seconder. Councillor Thompson, thank you. Councillor Gardner.
My thought on this is that there's $330,000 in the Heritage Fund. I don't know what else we would use it for, but I think that to pay proper respect to Petch House and its history of how we got the developer to bring it to Aurora and set it up, why wouldn't we use the money in the Heritage Fund to do everything that we need to do to make it Petch House completely functional?
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think at this point, it's council's prerogative if that's the direction you wish us to go. It was staff's suggestion, because we don't know the demand for that space, whether or not there is a demand to warrant it to be fully outfitted with all the HVAC, extra washrooms. Therefore, this phasing approach was to see if there was a driving interest to use that location for something else. As noted previously in a previous conversation with council, the 50,000, what we're speaking about doing, would not be negated and wouldn't have to be redone if later down the road we wanted to add those extra pieces. So it was ultimately a suggestion to take a baby step, check out what the true demand might look like before we invest a bigger number. But if council wishes to do the full gamut here and now, that is up to council.
Councillor.
Through Mr. Mayor, I voted against this originally because I thought it just wasn't doing enough. And it's maybe the chicken or the egg scenario. If we don't do everything to make it fully functional, how can we know if it's going to be truly used by the community? So my ask would be we do that. I don't know what else is. I mean, I think we've had this money for quite a long time and we haven't spent it. So I would like council to consider, perhaps not now, but maybe at the council meeting, of using this money, unless it's earmarked for something else, to really make Petch House what it could be. Thank you.
Councillor Reese.
Thank you. I have somewhat a different opinion about that, mainly because I heard from the Historical Advisory Committee that they did not want to use that money for that purpose. And so their recommendation was to try to find another source of revenue that would be more appropriate for the renovations that were to be done. So my question is, through you, Mayor, to probably Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, is what other revenue sources would we have for this type of a renovation?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the only alternative would be a tax-funded reserve, likely facilities asset management reserve.
Councillor.
And the other item that came out of HAC, as I read, and when I was there, had to do with if money is going to be taken from that reserve, would there be any opportunity to replenish that reserve through proceeds and revenue? So I just leave that on the table for an option as we go forward to the for council. I just respect the HAC and what they like to do with Petch House. I do appreciate what Councillor Gartner is saying about the value of the Petch House, however, and it's been lying rather dormant for a while, and it's good to get it out there being used for something that's appropriate. So thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gardner, second time.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Perhaps to, I don't know, Ms. Van Kessel or the CAO, how long has that money been sitting there? And do we have any other plans for it? And again, if it can't be answered tonight, I would like to know that for council, because if
balance that's identified is an available balance.
Generating funds through various development applications, maybe 15 years ago. So I think we've used a bit because we're currently the balance is around 330,000, but it's probably been 3 or 4 years at least since we've used any of those funds. But again, moving forward, I think there are opportunities to use those funds in various other projects or programs, heritage related, obviously.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you. Comment. I sat on the Heritage Advisory Committee. There was never any discussion of using it. And with respect to the committee, the recent discussion of the committee, I believe it was quite divided as to whether that money should be used or not. Was this really a heritage issue? And I would say to that, it certainly seems to me like this is a heritage issue. Nobody has wanted Petch House. We've tried to offer it to various organizations in town, and it's just, I don't know why, I won't speculate, but we've got it and we may as well use it to its fullest capacity unless something else is earmarked for that money. Thank you.
Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, is there any specific criteria to use the Heritage Reserve Fund?
Ms. Myra Van Kessel?
An excerpt from the reserve, through you, Mr. Mayor, excerpt from the reserve includes balances in the fund should be used to help Heritage Advisory Committee achieve their duties and functions as outlined in the committee's terms of reference, as approved by council from time to time, and to help facilitate any special programs, projects, or initiatives of the committee which have been given council approval. Balances in the fund will be planned for specific projects recommended to council or by council, and during the annual budget process or other times throughout the year, having consulted with the Heritage Advisory Committee.
Councillor?
Thank you. So yeah, the committee was a little bit split. One person had an issue with spending that money for this, considering its, floors and stuff that we would probably categorize as maintenance, I guess, to a heritage building. And then there was another member who had said they didn't have a problem with spending it. We should probably adjust that criteria, as the committees no longer have the ability to, I guess they could suggest spending money, but they don't. I guess that was done when the committees actually could make some type of a decision. I don't have a problem with this. My only issue with every agenda item that is anticipating spending any money in light of our DC issues, I'm of the opinion that we should step back and we should reassess until we have a solid plan on a extremely serious financial issue that we find ourselves in. Notwithstanding the fact this is a reserve, the money is there. I think we should be looking at every dollar spent extremely carefully.
Any other comments, questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 9.3, Councillor Gardner, you pulled this one. Did you want to move as is? Seconder? Councillor Thompson, thank you. Any comments or questions?
Also, Councillor Gallo's comment, there are some things that are suggested to be done with respect to correcting a person's name. But I don't understand about hard surfacing and I believe seats are to be permanent seating. I don't understand why we would be spending this much money. I understand it's a special anniversary, but as far as I know, the memorial and the grounds are in good shape. Through
Trustee
Mr.
Kemp.
Mayor, to whoever.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the surfacing around the cenotaph as it stands is a unit paver surfacing. So there's been some heaving just with time. It doesn't need to be done immediately, but it's just something that we thought should be taken under consideration, considering it is the 100-year anniversary and it's in a celebration. So those works would be planned in the future regardless, but we just thought we'd take advantage of the timing now to complete them. And in addition, there's just some traditional benches, just wood slatted style. We thought we'd take the opportunity to maybe upgrade them to some nice wrought iron to reflect the space a little bit more appropriately.
Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and definitely I think the Korean War Memorial should be lit, and also a memorial to the Aboriginal War veterans. That's very important. So through Mr. Mayor, what you're saying, Ms. Steenkamp, is that the electrical upgrade and the leveling of the ground and all these things would have been done at some point in the future, but we just want to move that up for the occasion.
I'm seeing a nodding of the head. Yes.
Thank you.
Is that all? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor and Ms. Camp. In respect to the budget that we're going to receiving later, are we considering collaboration with other municipalities to chip in, or have we looked at, what other kind of funding that might be available through different levels of government, since this is very significant? Or Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, maybe perhaps. Oh, sure, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gilliland. For the draft collaborative plan of action, we have consulted with the municipality of King Township and Whitchurch Stouffville. There are no budget commitments at present. They're waiting to better understand what council is prepared to endorse at this time. There's some areas that for them are more appropriate to support in times of budgetary commitments. Some of those areas are exhibitions, a banner program, not necessarily the site works at Aurora War Memorial Peace Park, for a few reasons that are more relevant to their budgetary mandates.
Councillor.
Thank you. And as far as the province, federal government, have they offered, or have you been able to reach out? I mean, I do think it's significant across Canada anyway. Have you been able to get any headway with that, or are you just not at that stage?
Ms. Johnson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gilliland, we have identified a number of federal grants mainly that are relevant to the project in all areas of the project. So there is a Canada Legacy Fund, exhibition grants. Those haven't been drafted or submitted yet, but it is part of this process.
Councillor.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weiss.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to probably Michelle and Ms. Johnson. This outdoor virtual and traveling exhibition is an interesting concept, and I'm interested in how much of your budget is focused on that, and what some of the intent is, and how you think that's going to work.
Ms. Johnson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Weiss. The exhibitions budget line includes 3 different approaches to exhibitions. So it includes an online exhibition in which we would target Virtual Museums of Canada Community Memories funding. That's a grant that would cover up to 50%. It also includes an on-site exhibition at Aurora War Memorial Peace Park that would be temporary for about 3 months and would include signage throughout the park that would have reproductions of archival materials, stories related to the establishment of the memorial, and then a traveling exhibition component. So that is 3 mediums for the exhibition. The traveling exhibition component is also eligible for grant funding through the Museums Assistant Program, and there is appetite to bring that to our partner municipalities in King and Stouffville.
Councillor.
Great. Great collaboration. Thanks.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for planning this. It's an excellent cause, and we look forward to the 2025 celebrations. Through you, Mr. Mayor, can I ask about when will the construction start, or the renovations to the facilities?
Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would anticipate either later this fall or early spring next year.
Councillor?
Okay. The reason why I ask is that it's discussed. It indicates here about the potential funding vehicles that might be open, federal, provincial, and if I'm not mistaken, funding is only available before the construction has started, because if we finish the projects, apparently it's not feasible to or eligible to be funded for the funding. So I'm just wondering whether the timing, because it says here that the grant application will be known in early 2025, and if we finish the upgrades before then we may not be eligible any longer. Is that any viability to that?
Steenkamp or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know the specifics of these grants because I haven't been involved in them, but I know through previous grants that there's different qualifications depending on the type of grant. And some of them actually, we are able to go ahead and move forward with some construction while in the grant process. So, but not knowing the specifics currently, I can't necessarily answer that, but we could look into it for sure.
Councillor?
Sure. No, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. 9.4, Aurora Community Center liquor license pilot program. Councillor Gardner, you pulled this one. Did you want to move the recommendation?
To receive for information.
Yes. So did you want to move that?
I'll move that, just the comment.
Seconder? Councillor Thompson, go ahead, Councillor Gardner.
The comment is, it was an interesting idea, and I'm sorry that it doesn't provide a sustainable business model. Thank you.
Councillor Gilliland.
Excuse me. Thank you very much for putting this report together, Mr. Furman. I know that you bent over backwards trying to make sure that we could get this to work, because we really wanted to see some sort of excitement there to get more bums and seats with the Tigers and just more entertainment value in general. And I really do appreciate the insight. My question to you moving forward with the information that we have, if somebody wanted to get a special occasion permit to do a special event, whether it's, it could be, special people from out of town that are doing an event and they want to serve, or even say the Tigers, they have a special, game that they're putting on, they want to serve. Is that something they can continue to do? And can they still have beverages in the stands the way we did the pilot?
Mr. Furman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that is an option. It just comes down to a matter of whether they request that within the special occasion permit through the AGCO and through our permitting process, but it is an option they're allowed to do.
Councillor.
Perfect. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Furman. And just so the public knows, in case they haven't read through the report and whatnot, you did reach out to not only the vendors and their opinion about the success rate and the business model, but you also reached out to the on-site snack counter as well. And maybe if you could just kind of just touch on briefly the steps that we took to come to this conclusion, so the public understands that we did take an inside look at all objectives to try and figure out this business model to make it work. If you could just kind of just touch on that, that would be great.
Mr. Furman.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly. The first thing we did was we took the sales figures from the pilot project, and we projected that if we put something permanent in place and had a chance to market that more effectively, and over time, we assumed it would grow. So we proposed that should the sales actually be 3 times what they were in our pilot, would that be, tenable for an operator? We spoke with two of the service clubs being very low cost to operate. They're through volunteers. They were not able to do that. They were not interested. It was not a model that they could sustain just because of the number of days, the time commitment for the volunteers. We reached out to potential for-profit partners as well, who cited ongoing costs, the costs associated with it, in particular staffing and insurance. We did speak to the operator of our concession stands as well, they would be the most suitable to move in because they already have the staffing in place. They already have the infrastructure by leasing the snack bar space. They also cited high insurance costs as a significant barrier. And again, they said that at the end of the day, the revenue they foresee generating, and they weren't as convinced that we could do 3 times the sales either. But they said even if we did, that the revenue generated wouldn't be enough to sustain it and make it worth all the steps that they would have to go through to put this in place and operate it.
Thank you. And it was a 500% insurance or something or other was the figure for the operator that we have in there now. If he was to change that to a special occasion of permit on a permanent basis.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes. The current operator we work with has a number of concession stands in various other municipal environments and non-municipal environments. Some are licensed, some are not. So they've experienced in this area. And they estimated that their insurance premiums would raise in the neighborhood of 500% once they added alcohol to the business.
Council.
Thank you. And yeah, it's a shame that it's kind of where we've come to, but I do appreciate all the hard work. And it's also good to hear that it was very well received within the people who participated, as well as from the vendor's perspective, as far as the acceptance of it. And there was no issues with people at all, like through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Furman, as far as like people there, you felt the feedback was great. It was very positive in general.
Mr. Furman.
Mr. Mayor, yes, aside from the business model, it was a very successful pilot. We had staff on site through all 3 evenings. We had no issues of concern whatsoever with inappropriate behavior or attempted overconsumption or anything like that. The survey results were very positive. Yes, there were some negative survey results, but the numbers were overwhelmingly in the majority supporting this option be available.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the hard work. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Reese.
Thank you. I'm really disappointed that we can't figure out a business model here because, as you say, all the survey work you did, and you did a fine job of doing the surveys and being careful about what we're doing. And the outcome was an increase in spectator involvement. And I think it said in here that say 50% or would purchase in the future, and they would be more likely to come back, which was the whole intent of the activity. We're not here trying to push alcohol on people. We're here trying to help the junior A Tigers survive and be successful. So I think it's something we should consider in the future. I just think the business model is not for us and for our service organizations, but perhaps it may be right for somebody sometime in the future. And I'd hate to make this look like it was a failure when it really wasn't. It was a good job done by us. We just don't have the model to be able to support it at this time. So those are my only comments. Thank you very much for the work you've done on it, John.
Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Council, I've been asked to bring up 14.3. Councillor Gardner, you pulled this one. Well, I'm not going to bring all of them because 14.3 is why we have staff here. So. Okay, 14.2. You pulled this one. You want to move the recommendation? Someone want to move the recommendation? Councillor Thompson, second. Councillor Gilliland. Councillor Gardner, go ahead.
you, Mr. Mayor, through you, or my comment. I'm disappointed. This is about traffic calming on Tamarac. Tamarac is a winding road. It's used as a bypass by many people. There's my information and my experience is that there's a lot of speeding because it's quite a long road, and I think there's just one or two stop signs. I did speak with Ms. Fleming earlier in the day, and it doesn't meet the warrants. But I think that it is a safety concern, and I know the residents in the area would sincerely like to have another stop sign. I don't know if everybody's familiar with Tamarac. It connects connects to Henderson at one side, both sides actually, and it's very close to Bathurst, and it also connects to McClellan. And it's a very, very big subdivision. And I know from the report that there wasn't either enough traffic or enough speeding traffic to warrant that. But I think it's an important safety issue, and I would ask that council consider installing an always stop control, especially considering there are so very few on Tamarac. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I'll vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 14.3. Councillor Gardner, you pulled this one. Do you want to move the recommendation? Someone want to move the recommendation? Councillor Kim, seconder. Councillor Thompson, thank you. Councillor Gardner, go ahead.
I would prefer if anybody else has any comments about, this is the modifications that the region wants to make to our official plan. If anybody has any comments.
I don't see any yet. Councillor, you pulled it. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Muno. In 11.3, employment areas, could I have some help understanding this? That there's going to be a new bullet, shall be adaptable to allow for redevelopment and intensification according to best practice for the wise and efficient use of the land. Could you tell me what that means? Are we talking about? Could you tell me what that means?
Certainly,
through you, Mr. Mayor, and I have Adam Robb here, our manager of policy and heritage planning, that could provide a bit more detail because he's been working with the regional staff very closely. The majority, I mean, all of these modifications being proposed by the regional staff are very minor. A lot of wordsmithing just to ensure that the wording in our official plan is consistent with the regional plan and the policies, specifically 11.3 employment areas. It's really just providing some, again, consistent language vis-a-vis the regional plan, ensure that there's some flexibility with respect to the employment areas. Again, that they remain employment areas just to ensure that that those areas are able to redevelop and intensify with employment uses. So it's not about necessarily converting those lands. It's just ensuring that there's consistent language with the regional employment land policies. Again, all these modifications, the majority of these are just essentially wordsmithing, ensuring that our language is consistent with the regional policy, and regional and town staff agree with all of these mods that are being proposed by regional staff. And again, there are not a lot of them. We're looking at approximately 30 or so, and with respect to an update to an official plan, it's relatively some minor wordsmithing with respect to the language and policies within our official plan.
Thank you.
Councillor?
So through Mr. Mayor, so in other words, we're to use the employment land for highest and best use and also intensification.
Through
Shimano?
you, Mr. Mayor, yes, related to employment uses. Yeah.
Thank you. Could you outline the glossary definition changes? I didn't have a chance to go through that. Thank you.
Mr. Ramono?
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, if I can ask
Thank you.
Mr. Rob to come up to just go through some of those. Yeah.
I don't think that one works. You might want to go, maybe that one over there beside Mr. Serio. Yeah, you can either do the one beside Mr. Serio or the podium. Yeah, no, the one beside Mr. Serio works. If you want to sit down. Yeah, okay. Mr. Rob?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. It's just with all these schedules, I just want to take up as much space as possible. So going back to your question, Councillor Gardner. So with regards to 11.3, the real priority there, as referenced by Mr. Ramuno, is that employment areas in particular, when we're looking at the street and block patterning for these areas, and generally speaking, employment uses such as warehouses can be quite large in some instances. We don't want to allow those larger uses to essentially over dominate those lands and leave them susceptible for future users to not be able to come in. That makes sense.
Councillor?
And that's been one of my talking about warehouses and employment lands for a long time. Thank you. Appreciate that. And in the glossary, are there any important changes there?
Mayor, the glossary is relatively straightforward. This is a consistency exercise with the definitions that come directly from the regional official plan. It is just mirroring those exact definitions that are already in force.
Are there any?
Councillor?
So are there any important changes with respect to our terminology?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in my opinion, in my professional opinion, I would say no. This is mostly just housekeeping and again, just mirroring already in force language.
Councillor?
Thank you. And again, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I see that in the appendices, water course and water body mapping is to be updated based on the region's GIS, which sounds sensible to me. But what about floodplain mapping? Because I know that's been updated.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So our floodplain mapping was updated through this exercise of the official plan review, and that's already in play through Schedule G. That map is accurate. What happened with the appendices is just a matter of updating those layers. It was an overlay exercise to update those water bodies and water courses. So Schedule G does have that information already.
Thank you. So through Mr. Mayor. So this is this took into consideration or is following the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority's floodplain mapping work?
Schropp?
It's an extensive engagement project. The LSRCA and the TRCA were involved essentially since day one, and their latest GIS layers have been incorporated into this official plan. That's correct.
Councillor?
Thank you. Because Mr. Mayor, last time I asked about this, I know that Lake Simcoe was charging municipalities to give them individual updates, but we don't have to worry about that now because great. Thank you. That's it.
Councillor Gallo? Did you want, because you had it up before, that's why.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, in section 9.2, the Aurora Promenade and Major Transit Station Area General Policies, it says section 9.2 is amended to add new policy section C and renumber subsequent sections accordingly. And C says within the Aurora GO Station Major Transit Station Area lands used and built form that would adversely affect the achievement of the minimum density targets in the plan will be prohibited. Could you just go through that and identify either what changes or what exactly that means?
Schropp?
Yes, absolutely. Through you, Mr. Chair, this is again language that is directly already enforced through the regional official plan. And we have a density target for our MTSA of 150 persons and jobs per hectare. What this policy would reinforce is that we don't want to be seeing counterintuitive developments, counterintuitive lower density developments in this area. That is our prime strategic growth area to concentrate development.
Councillor.
So through you, Mr. Chair, this is basically saying that you can't go below our minimums.
Mayor, essentially, yes, we don't want to be encouraging lower densities. That would be counterintuitive to the policy framework that's enforced for that area as a major transit station area.
Councillor.
Okay, under schedules and appendices, in 27, first of all, just the last sentence on page 399, notable changes are described below. Are there others that there are other changes that perhaps aren't noted?
Schropp.
Councillor Gow, do you mind just restating that section so I can place
So
it here?
it's schedules and appendices 27 and of our agenda. It's page 399. It's just the last little sentence there. It just doesn't reassure me that there isn't other things that we haven't noted.
Yeah, fair enough. Through you, Mr. Chair, this is the wording from the region directly, and the list we see today is the list as presented. These are the changes all encompassing.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, 4 says schedules that show the Aurora Promenade in major transit station area are amended to redelineate secondary plan boundaries to add parcels in yellow. So am I to understand that the region is asking us to add to our either Promenade General or MTSA boundaries?
Schropp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Marco, feel free to jump in as well. So what you'll see in that image there, the black line is the predefined boundary of the MTSA as approved by the province through the region's official plan. The pink area is our local designation as part of the promenade plan, being the MTSA designation at a local level to implement those upper tier policies. The yellow highlighted area would be extending that promenade boundary to better fit and align with the as directed policies of that black provincially and regionally approved MTSA area. So
Councillor.
that's correct.
So through you, Mr. Chair, who determines and who determined the MTSA boundary? I seem to recall during this during the various phases of our OP review that one of the sections specifically regarding the MTSA, the wording around that was, this is a recommended boundary. Who determined that boundary?
Schropp.
Mr. Mayor, that black boundary you see as the defined MTSA boundary has been approved since 2022 through the region's official plan, which as the approval authority was approved by the province in 2022.
And if we wanted to amend that boundary, is that something that we could do?
Schropp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this stage, no, that is enforced through the regional official plan as is right now. That's not to say through future MCR processes that could be revisited at the regional level, but as of now, that's been approved by the province as of 2022.
Councillor, I'm just going to go to Mr. Romano. Mr. Romano.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just and to add and to clarify. So the one thing that the province of the Planning Act won't allow by way of an appeal is any changes to major transit station area boundaries. So again, just to be clear, the actual major transit station area boundary, as you see it here, the regional mod isn't proposing a change to the boundary. The actual area within the MTSA was established back in 2021, 2022 as part of the regional OP update and our OP update approved by the province. So the actual boundary hasn't changed and it's not being proposed to change by way of this modification. So any changes to that MTSA boundary would have to occur during our next OP update. The only change that as Adam mentioned that the region is recommending by way of modification is what happened during our last draft that we presented to council. The region did not include the underlying MTSA or promenade land use designation for those yellow, those properties that are identified in yellow under that schedule. So what's being added now is the underlying designation of the MTSA promenade designation to permit the residential intensification, in heights of 7 stories. But the actual boundary is the same as was presented to council a couple of years ago and approved by the province back in 22.
Councillor?
Just to be clear, the MTSA boundary is identical, but the region is now asking to amend the secondary plan boundary. Is it expanding what we currently have?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it would be expanding that yellow area. And again, that specific area is noted as that already aligns with the regional mapping for what is known as the community area. So again, align with the MTSA boundary as facilitating a mixed use developable area that is again seeking a density of 150 persons and jobs per hectare, which this helps facilitate.
Councillor?
So is it simply that I mean, we know those lands. Is it simply the fact that we miss them in our identifying them? Why would it take the region to come to us in a review of our plan and say, no, you should add those in?
Sure, no.
So you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess just, I don't want to repeat myself. The boundary hasn't changed. The actual lands within that MTSA, as we recommended to council back in December for adoption, we identified the MTSA boundary. The earlier versions of our draft also included that area that is now yellow or white to be identified as pink, to provide that MTSA/promenade designation, color coding. The region at that time, I guess it was back last year, recommended, I think it was an oversight, a mistake, that notwithstanding that they're within the MTSA, that they should not have that designation. Through further discussions, I think they understand that it is within, those lands are within the MTSA. They should have a designation, right? It's common sense. And so the modification that they're recommending is really just to correct that omission or oversight, is those lands should have that underlying designation. But again, they were always within the MTSA boundary for residential intensification.
Councillor?
I apologize, it's still unclear to me. I understand the MTSA boundary isn't changed. That's clear. We're talking about the secondary plan boundary that's changed as a result of the region's review of our draft OP.
So, yeah, so you, Mr. Mayor, again, yeah. So as part of our OP update, our promenade secondary plan boundary, right, was expanded to encompass that MTSA boundary. But that was part of our OP update that we started a few years ago. And it was always identified that promenade secondary plan boundary north of Center Street would expand to include all those lands that were now identified as the MTSA boundary. So yes, it's true, but that was part of our OP update last year, or when we started that. Our secondary plan boundary, if you look at any of those schedules, I'm looking at Schedule D1, you'll see that red boundary line, which included our promenade boundary based on our 2010 official plan. As part of this new update, that portion of that promenade secondary plan boundary was expanded as part of our new OP last year to expanded north to include that new MTSA boundary. Again, that was a very conscious decision that we made through our OP update, right? So it's not being added now, but you are correct that as part of our OP review, that portion of the promenade boundary has been expanded as part of council's approval of the new official plan update, because it includes now the new area which we identify as the MTSA boundary in that area.
Councillor?
Okay, I'll leave it.
Councillor Weiss.
Thank you. My interest is on page 3, section 12.3 and number 11. It's identified here 12.3.3E. And it's really about the wording. And I want to know what we believe the wording is representing, because words matter when we're dealing with these types of things. It talks about here subject. Oh, sorry. The section is 12.3.3E on page 3. The wording that's concerning me, and I'd like to hear your view of it through you, Mr. Mayor, is notwithstanding the policies above, developing or site alterations shall not be permitted within significant wetlands, significant woodlands, significant valley lands, significant wildlife habitat, significant areas of natural and scientific interest. So my question is, are we trying to meet a certain standard of significance with this as opposed to simply saying it's not allowed? Or is there an effort here to make this more strident in the position that it has to be significant as opposed to just be available? Can you enlighten me on that a little bit?
Mr. Rob.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that section and that modification is strictly in terms of the conformity exercise with the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan, as well as the Regional Official Plan. So again, that language is not necessarily resulting in any major policy change or implementation. It's just strictly about being abundantly clear as to what applies from upper tiers.
Councillor.
Okay, I'll accept that for now, but we have a significant wetlands application in place right now, and I'm wondering what the significance of significant is, because it may make a significant difference in the way we behave with respect to that particular wetland. So I'm asking for some advice on that. So through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe to Mr. Ramuno as well. I don't know.
Mr. Rob. Or through you, Mr. Mayor, whether it be a woodland or wetland has a different evaluation in terms of determining significance. And that comes down to us through provincial policy and regional policy. Significant woodlands, for example, are determined based on size, determined based on species at risk. And what it all hinges on is the actual natural heritage valuation also coming into play for the specific site-specific areas to determine that significance factor, so to speak. And similarly for wetlands, the province maintains a database that determines provincial significance. And there's a map that incorporates what areas or what wetlands are significant across the province. So for each one of those categories, there is sort of a defined template as to determine significance.
Councillor.
And then the interpretation of that is left to the Conservation Authority through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we certainly can consult with relative agencies. As you can see in the policy language too, there, as mentioned in the modifications through section 12, there is a reference to, being verified according to York Region Official Plan Policy 3.4.30, et cetera. So there is a multi-stage approach in evaluating this. And this would all be done through the development application when it comes in, having that required study in play to determine those impacts.
Councillor.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Ramuno. I know I had a motion that was prepared in February and was kind of put on the back burner because we had some files in the OLT, and so it had to be put on hold. And as such, I haven't had a chance to put that back onto the agenda. And it did speak to some density or more intensification along the Leslie Street corridor. And I just want to make sure that, having this discussion in June, so I anticipate I'll probably bring this back in June. Is that going to be a hindrance to what we're trying to approve today?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Gilliland. My suggestion is we've gone this far. Let's hopefully council will endorse these modifications. The next step is the region will prepare a report, regional staff to their council to actually issue their final approval to our official plan. If, Council Gillian or through direction of council want to direct staff, at a future meeting to review a certain section of town or conduct a land use study for a particular section of town, we can certainly look at that and move forward with an investigation, which what I would call a small land use review, independent of this official plan review. My suggestion is let's get this over the goal line, have the regional council approve our official plan. If any member of council wants to come forward with a motion to direct staff to look at a particular policy or a geographic area of town to evaluate the appropriate land uses, we can certainly deal with that any time.
Councillor.
Thank you. I guess my only comment is I don't want to really delay the process too much because I understand that we are trying to look at, reducing the bureaucracy and the red tape and allowing projects to go further faster. And, to say we're going to do a land use study, anytime anybody says study, that to me just screams time. So, for me, I'm trying to look at expediting this a little more, and it's been sitting on the back burner since February. Here we are in May, and I'll probably get a June agenda. So, for me, is that going to be a challenge if I were to change the wording of my motion for June, if I wanted to say designate various properties that are left for that type of intensification on the Leslie Street corridor? Is that going to affect what we're approving today?
Mr. Romano.
See, Mr. Mayor, no, it's not going to affect moving forward with our official plan. But again, if there's any direction moving forward to take a look at, specifically your motion, I think it related to, reviewing sections of, Leslie Street, I think we can certainly take a look at that. But again, there is a process that we would have to follow depending on council's direction, but we can certainly, try and move that forward as quickly as possible. But again, I think that can happen, independent of the, of the approval of our official plan. But again, my suggestion is still we're at this stage. Hopefully council will move forward with this. Regional council or regional staff is prepared to bring a report forward to the regional council to issue final approval of the official plan. But again, we can certainly deal with any, any direction from council. No different than we are dealing with, private applications that will continue to come in, notwithstanding we have a new official plan, and we'll deal with those, on a case-by-case basis and follow our normal planning approvals process.
Councillor.
Thank you. I suppose we'll have a conversation between now and council because I do want to talk about that more. Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Ramuno, any update on a affordability housing secondary plan? I know that this has been a big bone of contention for me that we didn't really develop this plan prior to the OP, and it's being treated as something as separate after the fact. And I do think that it's something that if we are going to be designating areas of this type of appropriate intensification, that we should have that at least in place prior. So could you just, give me a little bit more insight or context of where we stand with that? I mean, obviously we're still doing a draft and there's plenty of time. I still think that we could fit this in. So perhaps you could shine some light on that.
Mr. Romano.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Adam's actually working on our first housing affordable action plan a draft that we will bring to council shortly. If not, we're in May, probably the June cycle for council's consideration, and then we can take that out to the public. So yeah, that's our next action item that we are working on to bring that forward for council's consideration.
Councillor.
Thank you. I'd be interested in seeing that in June. Would it be something that we could see prior to the official plan approval this cycle and do that together in tandem? Because it could spawn some changes or discussion as to how we would like to move forward with this OP based on the affordable housing secondary plan.
Mr. Romano.
To you, Mr. Mayor. No, again, to you, Councillor Gillian. I mean, the housing action plan really is a initiative that falls out of, an official plan update. I mean, it's not really going to recommend or propose any changes to policies in our official plan. There will just be initiatives that we will be making, we will be recommending to council with respect to how we can, continue to move forward to, work with our, other stakeholders, private developers, other levels of government, other community groups in ensuring that we meet our housing targets and, work towards achieving our affordable, attainable housing, housing targets. Again, it's, in my opinion, it will not affect any policies in our official plan. They're just initiatives and that we will be recommending to council that we can try and tackle. I mean, there are probably a number of initiatives that you'll see in the first draft housing action plan. But again, it's not really related to the official plan policies. So they're independent of each other.
Councillor?
Thank you. I guess my only response to that is, and I trust maybe that's what you're saying, but if we were to review this in June, that maybe some council members would want to expand beyond the action plan and agree and say, well, we agree with what we see here, but we want to expand that within the OP in these areas, and that could affect policy change. And we don't really know. We can't have that discussion until we see it. So again, I think my question was, if we wanted to defer this just to the June cycle, that 1 month, would that be an issue for you and your department if we were to delay it by a month? So at least we had the opportunity to see this and make comments at the same time.
Mr. Ramono, and just before you add, I believe this is on the Thursday agenda at the region as well. Mr. Ramono?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think this is time sensitive. I think we want to get this in front of our, through our town council and through regional council as soon as possible. Because we don't get it through by, May or June. I mean, we're looking at September. And quite frankly, there are policies in this new official plan update that will work towards trying to meet some of those affordable housing policies, because again, we have expanded some of our policies within the official plan, our major transit station areas. We've identified, areas for gentle and modest intensification along those local and regional corridors. So delay of this will also have an impact with respect to, any private application coming forward to take advantage of the policies that council has adopted past January with respect to the new official plan. It is time sensitive in my opinion, and I would suggest council move forward with the endorsing the mods so regional council can also issue approval of final approval of our official plan.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Councillor Weiss, second time?
Yes, thank you. On page 2, section 7.4, we're talking about 7.4.3 C. Additional dwelling units shall not be permitted in natural hazards or in areas rendered inaccessible to people and vehicles during times of flooding hazards or erosion hazards in accordance with the provincial policy statement. So if, for instance, there was an access road that leads into an area that's under consideration for development, this would restrict that application because the flooding of an access road would be considered a reason to deny that application. For you?
Mayor, so this policy speaks specifically to additional dwelling units. So that could take the form of, say, a garden suite in a rear yard. And that's what this is pertaining to specifically. Say a property is large enough that it has a portion of the rear yard within a floodplain. You cannot locate an additional dwelling unit specifically in that floodplain. Infrastructure related things, there is often ways to accommodate that in these areas through the appropriate mitigation measures, but this is specifically referring to additional dwelling units.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 14.1 as well. Councillor Gardner, you pulled this one. Do you want to move the recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I do.
Seconder? Councillor Thompson, go ahead, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I thank staff for the report, and I think this is a perfect example of how a citizen committee can contribute to an issue that the town is looking at. I like very much the way that there is a chart that has all of the comments from the committee. And we don't usually see that. So I think it's a really great idea. It helps understand the report and appreciate it. It's a great report. And the only comment I have, and I had made it before, could staff please check the lighting at intersections? I've had some complaints about Murray and golf links. The staff at that retirement home come to work very early in the morning, and 6 o'clock is early to me anyway. And there have been comments about the lighting there. So other than that, I think it's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weiss.
Yeah, I too want to thank the committee for doing the work that they've done on this. It's very important work to be done, and it's very detailed, and thank you for it. My only concern about it has to do with the price tag of it over the next 10 years. We have $29 million from 0 to 10, and then 56 million over 20 years. And again, looking at our DC report that we have today, I think this is something significant. So I'm just wondering then, therefore, if there's a phasing in of this, because it wasn't discussed anywhere that I saw in the report, that there would be priorities for certain things and not others. And I'd just like to bring that forward, and I don't know where that should lie, Mayor, in terms of a question. So,
Ms. Mary Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So like all master plans, to implement these initiatives, it's subject to future budget approvals. So, and then that will have to fit within the available funding that we have at the time to be able to implement these projects. So currently we're looking at about maybe up to about 65% of these are funded through the current or future DC studies, but then that means other funding sources are needed for the balance, and it will take time, and it depends on how quickly growth comes as well. So if growth slows, it takes longer. If it comes faster, we can move ahead faster.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor to Ms. Van Kessel. So just speaking about the priority of the trail system and cycling and so forth, my bone of contention's always been with the region and the regional roads. And it feels like Aurora tends to not be in that 10-year plan or 5-year plan or 30-year plan. So I'm just curious as to, how are we going to help prioritize and fund these initiatives if we can't even connect our east to west on Wellington Street from Bathurst to Industrial Parkway? What plans do we have in place to help facilitate that if we don't have control over that part of the budget?
Mr. Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we don't have too much influence over the region's budget, but we do advise where we can, and we can raise issues if they are significant for what our needs are. We do have like committees within our different levels, so we can have those conversations and see where it goes. But part of it is also making sure things get recognized in their master plans as well. So that's how it gets on their own priority list.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Mrs. Wainwright Kessel, just following up on Councillor Weiss' question with regards to, I guess, the shortfall over the long term. In the report, it states that the remainder, essentially $9.3 million, is coming from a yet to be confirmed funding source. So does that mean that in the short term, those are projects identified in the first 10 years, or the $29 million, we've already identified the funding sources for all those? It's just really the long-term projects out still remain to be defined.
Mr. Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there's still yet to be some portion of the short term that needs to be identified for funding sources. So of that 29.2 million, about 4.8 million. We still need to identify how we're going to fund those. Depending on the project, it'll have to be like a tax or water funded source, or we could be looking at potential grants. Again, the province may find a way to make us whole and we can actually start having growth pay for these, but we'll have to wait and see.
Councillor.
That's a very optimistic comment about the province making us whole. Thank you, Mrs. Wainwright.
Councillor Gardner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I guess to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. This is one of the few reports that I remember not seeing anything under financial consideration. And I know you said that that anything will have to be approved through the budget process, but is there no information to put under financial implication?
Swear Van Kessel.
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Gardner, the financial implications start on the bottom of page 4 of the report and continue all the way down page 5. So there's a table in there with some information as well.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 9.5. Town Square Rotary Clock Project. Councillor Thompson, you pulled this. Do you want to move that?
Yep.
Seconder. Councillor Gilliland, thank you. Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
Just really just a quick question through you, I guess, to Mrs. McDougall. Do we have a policy or process to be able to, I guess, navigate these kind of requests? Because that was my first thought is in looking at it, I think, you know, it's a very generous offering from the Rotary Club, but, you know, given the potential success of Town Square, there may be other organizations or clubs that come to us and are looking to make similar, I guess, donations or offering as well. And I just think, do we have something to help us navigate this process? Through you to Mrs. McDougall.
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, on a specific to this case, it's sort of a one-off and they're unique. Each one probably needs its own conversation because it depends on what the donor is interested in providing. So it's in consultation with a number of partners and staff here to sort of figure out the best course of action. I know if it were cash donations, that is maybe a bit different. That is something through our finance department could handle. When it comes to an asset like this, it's understanding the relationship of the asset. Is it a true physical donation? They want nothing to do with it and then walk away, or are they staying invested in and involved in the maintenance of it, like this scenario? I think it's each one is going to be unique depending on how the donor wishes to hand over their donation, I'll say. So I don't have there's no document, I'll say, to guide us. It's a matter of one-off.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? You can bring it up at council. Opposed? Carries. I'm gonna go to 13.1, just try to see if we can get that in before 9. So, because I got a feeling 11.1 is gonna take a bit longer. So 13.1 tree removal application. Councillor Gardner, you pulled this one. Do you want to move it? Thank you, seconder. Councillor Gilliland, go ahead, Councillor Gardner.
It's a shame that we have to lose this tree, but it sounds from the staff report that we do. And it's good to know that something else is going to be planted in it instead. That's all.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Let's see which one. How about York Regional Council highlights, 16.1? I think I can get that one in. I don't think we're gonna get that one in before 9 o'clock. I got 6 minutes. So I'm just trying to get a few in. 16.1, York Regional Council highlights. Councillor Gardner, you pulled that. Did you want to move it? Thank you, seconder. Councillor Kim, thank you. Any questions about the York Regional Council highlights? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Do we dare try it? Pardon? I say we just break right now and then we'll come back. Okay? All right, we'll break for 10 minutes. Council, we'll do 11.1. Councillor Gardner, you pulled this one. Do you want to move it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Gonna move it?
Just give me a sec, please.
It's just to receive.
Yes,
Thank you. Seconder,
is it
Councillor
the
Thompson.
DCs?
Councillor Gardner, go ahead.
Just to say that this is very concerning. And I can't really see a way around it. And it looks like, I mean, part of the comment is, it depends how much lost, depending on the amount of rental, purpose-built rental. And I don't think we're going to get anything that's like affordable housing. But that's really sad, because what we're trying to do is provide housing for people. And I don't think the developers are going to be interested in purpose-built rental. I don't know. I'm more. Mr. Mayor, do you have any comments on this? Sorry, Ms. Van Kessel.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there have been a few more updates on this since the report was written. We took the information as it came out, with Bill 185 being very new into this report. It is helpful that the province is walking back on the 5-year phase-in and also enabling us to add studies back in. So as a finance team, one of the things we're doing is we're already working on that bylaw. So what we want to do is, as soon as the province provides royal assent, is get that bylaw in front of council as soon as we can, so we minimize those losses overall. So we're working towards that. In the last couple of days, we did get the information on affordable units, because when this report was written, we didn't know exactly what that rates were going to look like. So for a purchase price of a home or condo, et cetera, we're looking at 506,600 being classified as affordable. So the likelihood of having many units below that is very slim. And then also the affordable monthly rent is quite low as well. I would see that be more if like Housing York or through York Region would look at investing in something to build affordable housing. That's probably the most likely area where I would see us losing DCs in that situation, which would contribute to affordable housing. The part that's really unknown is the additional units. So being able to put in 2 additional units on a current property, because they wouldn't get those without DCs. But still, it's a little bit unknown as to how much uptake there will be on that. So this report is it's a bit of a worst case scenario. I'm a little bit more optimistic that the losses won't be quite as bad as this.
Councillor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So what about where a house has a basement, decides to put in a basement unit? I guess we don't get DCs on that anyway. So
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So right now, under legislation, a current house can add 2 additional units without paying DCs. If they add a 4th, DCs are owed on the 4th one. I'm sorry, on the 3rd one.
Through Mr. Mayor, for clarification, so how could a property have a main residence and 3 other units? I don't think the province allows that. So are we talking about 4plexes?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, we would be talking about a 4plex. So in that situation, if a property was divided up into 4plex somehow, the 4th unit would be DC eligible.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Is that all, Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Reese.
Yeah, thank you for the report. It was helpful and discouraging at the same time. But it does have significant impacts on our budgeting process that we're now being asked to think about. And so I'm wondering, when this does flesh itself out so that we have this information, if we could, your intention is then, through you, Mayor, to give us an update on this with different scenarios that are reflective of 185, et cetera. Is that the plan to come back to us in the near future through you, Mayor?
Mr. Mayor Mccaskill?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So part of our annual budget process, we'll be looking at the overall DC forecast, and we'll be taking the latest information when we develop our forecast for how much we can afford to put in growth projects over the 10-year period. And that'll consider the implications of Bill 185 and also the pace at which we're seeing growth come in as well. Because the DC study, it takes the growth information per our planning information, but it doesn't necessarily always reflect what's actually happening. Some years it could be much higher, some years it could be lower, and we have to adjust for that overall. But we'll also consider if there are areas where we are losing DC, some municipalities are creating alternative reserves to fund these growth, or they're using existing reserves. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this, on how much we're losing in respect to these additional units or potential affordable units, and how we're going to fund those.
Councillor?
Yeah, the other thing that I noticed in here is that we're using an assumption based upon, I think, 5,800 units over 10 years, where we have a pledge that says we're supposed to do 8,000. So the impact of that, the financial impact of that assumption is going to be, I think, significant again. And will you be looking at the scenario in terms of what is possible versus what is likely? Through you to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So currently the DC bylaw that we have is valid for up to 10 years. We can renew them earlier if we do see significant growth happening, and growth happening much faster than what was included in the DC study. We can look at updating that DC study at an earlier time. Now, again, the DC study is now actually going to be part of the bylaw as well. So we're going to be able to collect the development charges for that too. So there's opportunities to adjust and adapt as we go along. And again, with the budget process, we look at the forecast every year. We look at the trends. We talk to planning to see what they're seeing as well, so that we can get our best estimate of what we're actually expecting to see in development charges over the near term, so we can ensure that we can pay for our projects and also pay for our debt obligations.
Councillor?
Yeah, thank you. I guess all I'm really concerned about now is the impact of this on our budgeting and our process. And I'm hoping that we could, I was considering putting a motion forward to have a special meeting on this alone, but it's not appropriate at this time because we don't have all the information. But I'm hoping that we can have a meeting that has an agenda that's relatively short, and so that we can put all the attention on this that we possibly can. So that's all my recommendation is, but we'll have to wait and see how it all falls out. So thanks very much for your input.
Thank you. Councillor Gallup?
Thank you. Well, certainly the alarm bells are ringing, I'm sure, for all of us. And while it's clear that the dust hasn't really settled, so it's not an easy thing to pinpoint in terms of what our strategy is going to be. However, I really don't want to either wait for the province to make us whole or anything else that we can't affect. I hope we're taking a much more proactive approach, and even coming to council with a variety of different options to be able to figure out how to address this in a very short amount of time. I believe it's essential that we get ahead of this and figure out ways of mitigating this. And all options should be on the floor for us to elaborate, to discuss, to figure out which direction we're going to go. And I don't want to wait very long to have those discussions. They need to happen fast. They need to be thorough, and everything needs to be on the table to discuss. So through you, Mr. Chair, is that something that this council should be anticipating?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So part of this is what the market is driving as well. So and what development is coming for. So as we get an understanding of what's coming through in that pipeline of development through Marco's team, we'll get a sense of if there's things in there that are looking for purpose-built rental or looking for additional units, and getting a sense of what's in the queue. One of the things that we can easily adapt with is to start with is the capital plan. We can adjust and adapt that way. But and the other area we can look at is how we fund this growth gap. Now, as I said, like with the information that we recently got, like just in the last couple of days about what is considered to be affordable, I think the chances of us seeing affordable units is much lower than what we originally expected until we had that information, because this just came out within the last week or so.
Councillor?
But through you, Mr. Chair, we can certainly influence development through our official plan, through whatever we're projecting out there, to be able to have them put shovels in the ground as quickly as they can, to be able to mitigate this. I want to be assured that we're thinking of every avenue to be able to address this. It's significant. I don't know if I've, in my 13, 14 years here, experienced this type of impact. Obviously, we knew it was coming down the line, but as I said before, the dust hasn't settled, and it looks like day by day things are changing. But I really encourage us to get ahead of this and not sit back on this and not be one of those municipalities that don't plan ahead.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland?
Thank you. I kind of share some of the same sentiment about understanding what our future outlook is, because we might want to look at more density in certain areas just to offset some of that cost and the incentive for developers to come in and build. So through you, Mr. Mayor and Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, how soon could we have or host a special council meeting on this to give us some objective look at choices and maybe how we want to move this forward as to Councillor Gallo's suggestion?
Mayor Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would take a bit of time for us to do that analysis. So I'm not sure if we'd be able to do it before the council break. So I'd have to take it back and look.
Councillor?
Thank you. When you say council break, you mean before the summer? Is that what you're suggesting? Okay. Could we schedule something for shortly, like for the fall in September? So at least when it comes to budget, we have an idea of, how this is going to affect us moving forward. Obviously, we're starting to look at things for a 2025 budget now. Is there a way that we could have this meeting sometime in September?
Mayor Van Kessel?
And would that give us time to actually have a fulsome understanding of it that would affect the budget?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So part of the budget development will actually be looking at our DC forecast and looking at the additional funding that we do require. So we'll be pulling that information together over the summer. We could look at doing something in a report in the early fall. Otherwise, it will end up being as part of the budget as well. Yeah, because it will be addressed there too.
Councillor?
Thank you. I think that, I know myself, I would like to see something in September in a report or even a special council meeting. I know we have extra Tuesdays now, just so we can have a fulsome discussion. I think this is serious and although this might affect our budget, but also, thinking about the intensification and how we're going to make decisions about that, I think is important. Is that Mr. Ramuno? Or you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno? Is that?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry if the question was related to the affordable housing strategy or the review on the 4 additional units.
I think it's a little bit of both, just understanding, should we be looking at more density in certain areas? Obviously, we're going to get this report in June. DC charges are going to be, obviously affect the decision making. Should we be looking at more heights in different areas to offset some of these costs? Like, these are just all these questions that we just don't have. And I believe this report that we have in front of us isn't really answering all those scenarios and questions we have. So, having some sort of special council meeting to address these questions and concerns as we fall into the next budget, I think is kind of important. So is that something that we could do in September? And would that give us sufficient time to make some sound decisions?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that provides sufficient time for us to report back jointly in September. Certainly.
Councillor?
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Before I call the vote, just had a few things to say. It's not many times that I actually thank the province, but I want to thank them for listening to municipalities, listening to our staff. We've been mayors right across this province have been advocating to the province in regards to the exemptions to DCs and the reductions and the phase in, and how problematic it was going to be to municipalities and to our budgets. And we've constantly been having those meetings, and that's been going on since November of 2022 when they introduced Bill 23. So staff have been working on this, and I'm glad that the province has listened to a lot of the concerns that we had, and they've walked back a lot of the bigger issues that would have seen some major exemptions and reductions in our DCs. And so we're almost back to where we were to begin with. There's still some slight changes that are going to be impacting us. But I know that staff are on top of this. I know we're working on this, and I'm looking forward to seeing the report that comes, because I know that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we continue to provide all the services and everything that our community needs and be fiscally responsible at the same time with what the province lays out in legislation. So I do want to thank staff for all the work and my colleagues for the advocacy that we've done to the province to get to this point where they've rolled back a lot of the issues. We'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 13.2, outdoor artificial ice rinks. Councillor Gardner, you pulled this one. Did you want to move it? Someone like to move that? Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Weiss, thank you. Councillor Gardner, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I find this, I can't agree with this. I understand that it would be lovely to have this. It would be lovely to have a covered over ice rink and a surface that we could use for other things in the summer. But I don't think we can afford to spend the money at the moment. So I have to vote against it.
Councillor Weiss?
Similarly, this is one of those things that I've been advocating for a number of years, because it's important for people to have outdoor activities, unsupervised activities, places that they can take their family gathering and all the rest of it. And I guess my first question on this has to do with the difference in the original budget of 3.2 million and how it has expanded up to over 10 million, considering the amenities that are being included in it, because we're just finding these build outs to be extremely expensive and over budget, and it's something that should be concerning every municipality everywhere. So through you to Mrs. McDougall, the estimation that we have here of around $11 million up from $3.2 million. How firm are we? How accurate might that be? I guess that's through to Mrs. Steenkamp.
Steenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that $3.5 million was an estimate through the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So that's what the consultant had provided. And this was our concern when we actually sat down to do some research and look into this report, that we were finding that the costs were far greater for even the base amenities that we would need. So that's how we got to that kind of base potentially $11 million for the project, or even upwards, depending on what you want to include in it and where it's to be located.
Councillor?
So if I may ask, then the other part of this is the conditional approval for 50,000 to have a consultant look at this. Can you give me an idea of what the consultant report would look for and look at, and what's going to come back to us should we agree to hire a consultant to give us some more information on this, through you to Mrs. Steenkamp?
Steenkamp?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the primary idea around the 50,000 is that staff just don't have the capacity or the knowledge to dig deep into this and get a good grasp on the costs. There's many parts to it. We don't have a full understanding of refrigeration systems from a technical point of view. If we are to put in an artificial refrigerated rink, we can't necessarily co-locate it at an arena that's existing. And even if we couldn't draw on the refrigeration units that's within those arenas. So it would have to have its own self-contained one. Also, just feasibility for parking, the size of parking that we would need for these locations, specifications on what it would cost for the roofing structures and so forth. So this is really what we're asking them to put together, is to do a detailed dive into the locations, do some rough planning as to what would fit, what would have to be moved, also to give us an idea of costs and give council some scenarios. So on the low end of the budget, almost a shopping list per se is what we're kind of looking for from the consultant, that they could say, if we're adding a washroom, or if we're adding a fully roofed, if we're adding some concessions, if we're adding some seating or what have you, some change rooms, what would that be as a full package with everything included, or as a reduced, just bare kind of bones facility? So that's what we're asking the consultant to do. Because as you can appreciate, it's a huge amount of money, commitment, and capital. And we're just cognizant of that. We want to get it right the first time and present to council, the facts as it is, so you can make an educated decision.
Councillor?
Yes, and I saw some reference to multi-season use of this, which is important because nobody wants to be spending that kind of money for something that's going to be operating for 5 months of the year. So that would be included, I assume, in the report. The other thing that I saw was the notion of a return on investment. So I'm wondering, this doesn't sound like a real great business opportunity, frankly, to make any money at. So my comment is there a business plan that you have looked at in a preliminary way to see how the place would be operated from an operational cost standpoint? Is that something we do? We wouldn't ask that of the consultant, would we, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Steenkamp?
Ms. Steenkamp, and I believe the consultant would prepare a business case, but.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, the consultant would prepare a business case, but more so from a funding model from the capital expenses and the locations. We internally would provide the consultant with the information on the funding model for the operational needs that we would have, or the service level that we would set.
Councillor?
And I would assume, would the consultant be looking at opportunities for sponsorship, naming rights, things of that nature that would lower the capital cost of this eventually? Or is that something we would do here within our own community? Through you to Ms. Steenkamp.
Steenkamp?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly the consultant can look at that, but that's something that we would be doing internally because we have staff capable of preparing that information.
Okay,
Councillor?
Thank you.
Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. What would be the funding source both for the consultant for the 50,000 as well as the capital? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, presently the funding source is development charges, Parks and Recreation. As we finalize what the overall picture of this project will look like, we do expect there will be some benefit to existing. So it would have to have some tax funding associated with it as well.
Councillor?
But we haven't captured that as of yet.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through Mr. Mayor, not yet.
Councillor?
Yeah, although I was the biggest, I think, proponent of this, I just, considering our DC discussions and issues, I have a real tough time moving forward and spending 50,000 to potentially spend, looks like between 10 and maybe at the higher end, $13 million for this, funded primarily, I suspect, from from DCs, to which we have, as a previous discussion, we have some serious issues with. So I just don't think the timing is right. Until I feel comfortable that we have a handle on our DCs, I think it's irresponsible to move forward with this project.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I agree with the comments with Councillor Gallo. I think that, I think we'd all like to see this happen, but at the same time, and given some of the conversations we've just had, that I think that perhaps we table this or just defer it for either next year or to the fall to further budget discussions. Like I said, it'd be nice to have, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen now. And so I too would feel a little bit more comfortable having further conversations, see what other changes the province might be willing to make in the coming weeks and days and months with respect to the DCs, get a better handle on whatever that shortfall is. We just heard our treasurer say in the previous conversation that there may be some capital projects that we need to switch up or move down the line, and this may very well be one of them. But I agree that we should look at perhaps postponing this decision.
Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. That was my first reaction as well. So I'm glad to hear that most of us are on the same page. Through Mr. Chair to Ms. Teenkamp, I'm assuming that the official rink really is a sole purpose for skating only. It's not a multi-use for anything else.
Ms. Teenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's certainly in the winter, it would be sole use for skating, either pleasure or it could be booked for hockey even. But during the summer, most artificial outdoor rinks have a multi-purpose use. They could be used for events. They could be used for private parties, wedding, for an example. They could be used for pickleball. It could be lined for pickleball, could be lined for tennis, could be lined for basketball. So ball hockey, so any other court use. They are fairly flexible and multi-use courts.
Councillor.
Thank you. That's an interesting take. When you said pickleball, of course, my eyes perk up knowing that there's that extra use. Obviously, it's the cost analysis of the multi-use sport, and I think we've gone down that path quite a bit. And I also think that looking at the locations on here are pretty subjective as to where it would be suitable, just based on that seemed very challenging as well, just based on the size. And I believe we are still looking for a sports dome of some sort to facilitate multi-court sport use as well. So it seems to be kind of competing with one another, for a lack of better term. So at this point, I would feel more comfortable just putting this on hold for now until we figure out all the finer details with DCs, obviously multi-use and the land as well. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Council, I'd recommend that if someone wanted to move it to refer it back to staff. Sorry, I just got that. You just sent it to me. Refer back to staff to be brought forward at a time when the town is more certain about development charge revenue. Is that something does that work? Councillor Thompson? Councillor Gallo, did you want to move that? Are you okay with that? No, I'm just asking if you wanted to. Sure. Okay, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Gallo. Does everyone understand? We'll refer it back to staff to be brought forward at a time when the town is more certain about development charge revenue. Okay? Good with that? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. 15.1. Motion. Someone like to move that? Councillor Weiss, thank you. Seconder. Councillor Kim. Any comments or questions? Councillor Weiss.
Yeah, I guess I've looked at this from a number of angles, and I like the notion of it, and it is for a report. My questions or my comments would be about the amount of funding available, the buildings that would be considered. I assume they would be heritage designated buildings, and in particular, I'm interested in the downtown, the BIA, and the revitalization of the BIA. This may be a stimulus for the landlord in that area. So I'm in favor of looking at this report and seeing how the eligibility works, as well as the amount of funding that would be necessary to do a good job at it. So I'm in favor of the motion and particularly the report, but I'd like to reserve my final vote based upon what comes back. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was thinking of it more in terms of residents who had heritage homes who wanted to fix them up. Although I understand why you mentioned that, but I would put the residents, our residents, before the landlords.
Councillor Gilliland?
Hello, thank you. Could you just explain the difference between our previous heritage program that we had? I don't know if we have it anymore, but I believe we did have a heritage CIP of sorts.
Mr. Romano?
Certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. So we did have a community improvement plan in place that expired, I believe, in 2019. And one of the elements or components of the plan was a heritage facade grant program. So as I read this motion, that's something that I'm thinking about. If we, we'll consult with the Heritage Advisory Committee, and it'd be a similar type program to try and institute a heritage facade improvement program. That could be one component for properties within our downtown area to use those funds, and matching, the owner would put up matching funds as well to for facade improvements for their properties. There could be other programs that we could obviously explore with our committee as well.
Councillor?
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair to Mr. Romano. So, I mean, I like the motion. I understand, the point of it and so forth. I just want to make sure that we're not putting any too much restraint or hindrance on the application process for getting a grant, because from what I understand, the last program that we had in place wasn't utilized because of the criteria to apply. You had to have the capital up front and the people secured in order to do the work, but people couldn't secure the work and get to that stage because they didn't have the capital. So it was kind of like a catch-22. Have we learned from those barriers and what we're expecting to do with this one?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and certainly we'll work on our use the past CIP program, and if there's ways that we can improve that process, we'll definitely explore those opportunities and provide recommendations to council once we consult with our committee. But we'll certainly, point is taken, we'll ensure that if we're going to implement any program moving forward, we'll ensure that we can streamline that and make it as user-friendly as possible.
Councillor?
Thank you. So when this does come back to council, we'll have a chance to review what the parameters look like. I just want to make sure that we're not repeating the same thing that we did last time. I did have a few people who were interested parties when the CIP was enacted back in that time, that they had shared that the reason why they didn't utilize it was based on that capital and investing up front in order to get this. Just seemed kind of counterintuitive. So long as we have a chance to review it, and if you can come back to make sure that addresses some of those concerns and those barriers, I think that would be really great. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. New business.
The question really has to do with our boards and committees, particularly with Councillor Gallo's resignation from there. I'm wondering the direction forward. We've been asked by a number of residents and people who are on committees, particularly the number of them that Councillor Gallo has been leading for a while. Is there a plan in place for the replacement of those chair positions through you to perhaps yourself or to the clerk?
Yes, Councillor, there is a plan at this moment in time. What we're going to do is we're moving into the summer months. The only one that we need to fill at this moment in time that is urgent is JCC. Councillor Thompson has said he's willing to step up and take that role on for the time being. But as we go through the summer months, since there's no committees, and in September we'll reevaluate, and if Councillor Gallo is still unable to attend, then we'll look at appointing someone at that time.
Great.
Okay, so we'll work through the summer, and I'll talk to each of you individually and see who's interested, and then as we get closer to September, if need be, we'll put that motion in front of council to appoint those members to those specific committees.
Yeah, and I just want to thank Councillor Gallo for the work that he's done, the leadership in the library board where I've served with him, as well as the active transportation work that we've seen here done tonight. So I just want to thank them on behalf of the council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo.
Any other new business?
No.
Councillor Gallo, new business?
Thank you. Through Chair to Miss Camp and Miss McDougall afterwards. Pickleball update. I would love a pickleball update. I'll start with Miss Camp. Obviously, the community is very excited about Fleury Park and a new facility that we had approved in our budget. And I want to know how that's coming along. We've gotten the procurement process, and then also with the maintenance of the current pickleball courts that we have.
Steenkamp.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the Fleury Park project, it's a two-phase. So council approved the funding to acquire a consultant to work on design and cost estimates. So we're prepared to come to budget with the second phase of the cost estimate. And then that'll be presented in the fall for construction in 2025. And that will include a pickleball courts. The second part that you might be referring to is there was council endorsed funding for 2024 for upgrades and some resurfacing of courts in town. So that is being completed at Edward Coltham and at Trent. So there's some upgrades going there with some fencing, some expansion of the courts. And that work is just being completed right now from a design point, and we'll be going out for an RFP shortly.
Councillor.
Thank you. That's great. So as far as through Mr. Chair to Ms. Teenkamp, as far as the RFP for the construction, I've kind of gotten the rumblings in the community of court installation that a lot of their projects have already been booked for this year. So is that an indication that we're not going to have any resurfacing done this year, just due to the fact that we haven't really made that commitment to book a vendor? Because from what I understand, a lot of people are booked until next year.
Ms. Teenkamp.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, the consultants we've talked to and the contractors, there is work available still for that, and they've assured us that they have some time to fit us in. So we're not concerned about that.
Councillor.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure that the community felt confident that we're able to have this done for this year, and we didn't have to wait again. So I appreciate that. And I am excited to hear about Fleury Park this fall, I guess. I guess it's not happening this year, but at least we're making movements forward. I know it's a big project, so I do appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. McDougall. Second pickleball question, because obviously we're all excited about this outdoor season, but of course we want to know about the programming and if we've made any changes to indoor and outdoor and what that looks like for this season.
Ms. McDougall.
Through Mr. Mayor, so we have and continue to offer leagues and lessons in the AFLC. That is currently active right now. That is based on a pre-registration model. You sign up for a set number of weeks in advance. That's ongoing currently, and through that program we offer different skill sets: beginner, intermediate, learn to play, and lessons. The seniors offer ongoing indoor their drop-in at the AFLC and the senior center itself. This spring, we did lessons learned from last year. We took advantage of the arena floors when they were ice out. This year, we are adding back in an opportunity at the SARC while the pad is out. So that is happening right now at the SARC while the pad is out. They're just mini sessions. Those ones are ongoing for the next few weeks until ice goes back in. We indoor additionally ongoing as our drop-in programs. We did switch based on the level of demand and the number of disappointed people when they'd arrive for drop-in, and the wait lists that were happening when people would walk in. We did move the drop-in program to a pre-registered program. However, that's on a weekly basis. So you're looking at your schedule in advance, you pre-register for the time you want to arrive. Residents have an advantage of I think it's a set number of 5 to 7 days in advance of non-residents to sign up for the time slot that they want. They have to pay at that time, but at least there's a commitment level then for them to know when they show up, they're going to actually get on the court. As for outdoor, we are offering the same promotion. It's still drop in, first come, first serve at the pickleball locations. The locations where they were shared with tennis, the same schedule is being promoted. It's online. People can look in advance to know what time slot is promoting for pickleball versus what is promoting for tennis. Those are first come, first serve. Their schedules are also posted at the location. So if you arrive, you know when to anticipate pickleball versus tennis. All of these details can be are available online. If you just pull up the town website under the search engine, queue up pickleball, it brings you to a web page dedicated to pickleball that shows all of these programs summarized in one location.
Great. That's very good news. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, new business? Councillor Thompson? Councillor Gallo? Councillor Kim? PSA, Councillor Kim?
I have one, Mr. Mayor, calling children and youth performers. It's your time to shine. Enter by May 20 to compete in Aurora's Performing Arts Festival presented by Marquee in partnership with the town. So find out more at aurora.ca/arts festival.
Councillor Gallo? Councillor Thompson?
The town of Aurora is partnered with EnviroWorld to raise awareness about water conservation. From now through to May 20th, Aurora residents can buy a discounted rain barrel online. Join us in preserving water, reducing runoff, and cutting costs. Order your rain barrel online at aurora.ca/rain barrel. That's it.
Councillor Gardner?
Pool season is just around the corner. Please, as you open your pool, remember that water is harmful, that pool water is harmful to aquatic life. Help us keep our streams, creeks, and Lake Simcoe healthy and full of life by following the proper pool and spa discharge steps. You can get information on how to do that at aurora.ca/pools.
Councillor Gillen? Oh. Is there anything else, Councillor? Yes, there is.
I believe it's Asian Heritage Month. And I have to say that yesterday was Holocaust Remembrance Day. My mother-in-law and father-in-law's entire families died, were murdered. They were the only survivors in each of their families. So I extend my sympathy to all of the survivors. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, and just add to that, it is also, as you where it's Jewish Heritage Month as well, and we have proclamations for both months on the town website. Councillor Gillen?
Thank you. I appreciate you mentioning that, Councillor Gartner. I did a post as well that was moving to me saying if we held a moment of silence for every victim of the Holocaust, we would be silent for 11.5 years. So that was something that was very moving, I thought. PSA, calling all Indigenous artists, horticulturists, and passionate volunteers. John Abel Park is looking to bring your creativity to life. Expressions of interest are now open for 3 distinct features at our new park. 1, wood pole carvings be featured on the park pathway. 2, educational healing garden with Indigenous consultation. And 3, annual community garden plot program. To learn more about your submission for expression of interest, please visit aurora.ca/John Abel Park. I think that's a really great initiative, so I'm happy to hear that. Continue on with the arts and culture sector. I always like to give shout out to the Aurora Culture Center. They have a lot of things that are happening. Specifically, they have an early bird gets to wear in public reception on May 16th at Town Hall at 6:30 p.m. So please check that out. They also have a lot of camps that are registered for the summer and some shows that are happening currently. As well as the Hillary House also has some things going on. We like to support our local National Historic Site, some walking tours on May 25th, and some peacekeeping in the present and past on May 29th. Also, just keeping with the fact that we just had a big active transportation master plan, which I thought was really interesting, is that the Aurora Cycles is going to have an event for cycling on June 2nd at 11 a.m. at Sark. So if you want to come and cycle, please join that. Last but not least, I do want to give a shout out to Ryan Schnell. He's the Chief of Fire Prevention, and he was just given an award, and I'm trying to bring this up here. He was given an award from the Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition and the National Fire Protection Association. And he was the 2024 recipient of the Bring Safety Home Awards, and it was featuring the sprinkler systems in a new subdivision in Aurora, which is the first of its kind. So congratulations, Chief of Prevention, Ryan Schell.
Thank you. Councillor Weiss, PSA.
Thank you. I just want to announce the Aurora Youth Innovation Fair. It takes place Wednesday, the 15th from 6 to 9 p.m. here at Town Hall. People are invited to stop by and see these kids who have done some fantastic work on innovation. They're grade 4 to grade 12. Brilliant ideas and innovations trying to solve real world issues. So for more information, you can go to aurora.ca/youth innovation. And the other thing I should say, of course, is in Ward 1, we have our farmers market. They had a tremendous start, great weather in the first day. They're attracting more and more vendors into the town park, happening every Saturday now through the summer. So I encourage as many of our residents and people from out of town coming in to support the farmers market. Yep. That's it.
Thank you. It's actually new business, but I got to do it because I forgot. Pardon? Okay. We have a committee appointment, so we're pleased to announce the appointment of a new citizen member, Bogdan Brick, to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. Congratulations, and we're looking forward to seeing you as part of the committee. I did want to give a shout out to two Aurora residents, two youths. So Ethan Waba and Millie Steinman, they actually competed at the World Debating and Public Speaking Championships in Australia. And Ethan placed 3rd overall, and Millie placed 9th. So it's pretty amazing. We had two Aurora residents down in Australia competing at the World Debating and Public Speaking Championships. I see future politicians. So congratulations to both of them. And then also, just to finish up, I know Council, we each have this Moose Hide campaign in front of us. And I just wanted to, Ms. McDougall, maybe she can kind of elaborate and explain exactly what this is.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly I'll just share some additional information. You noted a broke card that is available. This is now available at our rec centers, the town hall and JOC. Public can pick one up. What this is about is called the Moose Hide Campaign. It is a nationwide movement dedicated to ending violence against women, children, and individuals across the gender continuum. This initiative is a powerful symbol of our commitment to reconciliation and fostering a community of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. The moose hide pins, including a piece of leather, but there's also, out of interest, there's a vegan one as well. If people are interested in wearing one that do not want to wish the true moose hide, there is a vegan option. But it's more about the symbolism of it. If they wish to, they are available at our rec centers, as I mentioned, JOC and Town Hall. The Moose Hide campaign is on specifically May 16th, but leading up to that, on this day, we encourage all community members and staff to wear the pin as a personal pledge to honor, respect, and protect the vulnerable individuals in our lives, and to voice our opposition to gender-based domestic violence. Our involvement in this Moose Hide campaign is coordinated by the Town of Aurora Indigenous Relations Committee in collaboration with our Anishinaabe consultant, grandmother Kim Wheatley. Together, we are working diligently to support the town's truth and reconciliation efforts. And for more information, please visit moosehidecampaign.ca.
Thank you, Mr. McDougall. Councillor Gallo, did you have something to add?
Just wondering whether I missed something. I see some handouts for PSAs.
I had 5 of them, so I handed out 5.
Got it.
Motion to adjourn. Councillor Weiss, Councillor Gillen, did you want to add something?
I just wanted to mention the Cassie and Friends event that happened. Is that okay?
The which?
Cassie and Friends event.
Oh, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. There's so much talk about the last PSAs. I just want to do a shout out to Cassie and Friends. It's a charity in Canada that's dedicated to pediatric rheumatoid disease in the community. So juvenile arthritis. And I was fortunate to be invited to participate in launching off the family day at the Aurora Community Center. They had a hockey game match with various researchers and family members as well. And what was really impressive is that there were researchers and families from 9 countries here in Aurora that were participating in this conference. And it was such a lot of great work that they were doing in order to try and combat juvenile arthritis. So I thought it was very impressive work that they did. And Aurora was here and lucky enough to be able to host that Family Day hockey event for them. If you want any information about their cause, please just go to Cassie and Friends, look that up, and see how you can contribute and help for the cause. I just wanted to point that out. It was a great event. Thanks.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Weiss, no? Seconder, Councillor Thompson, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.